What if I told you that a single moment on a Utah freeway could change Isabelle Brown's entire future forever? A crash that sparked a chain reaction, a lawsuit demanding $225,000, and a looming courtroom showdown that could destroy everything she has built. This case is shocking, it's messy, and the stakes could not be higher. So stay tuned, because what we uncovered will leave you stunned. The story we are about to dive into feels like something that was never meant to leave the quiet shadows of the courtroom. Yet here we are watching the layers unfold one by one in a way that makes it impossible to look away. Because this is not just a simple fender bender, not just a minor scrape on the highway, but a legal battle with stakes so high that every word, every document, and every piece of testimony could shift the future of a young woman whose name has already been etched into headlines. Isabelle Brown found herself in the center of a storm after a crash in 2023 on a busy stretch of interstate in Salt Lake, Utah, and what began as a single moment of distraction or miscalculation has spiraled into a lawsuit that demands answers, accountability, and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. The plaintiff, a woman who claims that Isabelle set off a chain reaction of collisions, is not stepping back. She is pressing forward with a demand that will shock many who hear it, and the suspense lies in whether this young woman can withstand the weight of the accusations that keep tightening around her neck. Now picture this. The interstate buzzing with cars speeding through the lanes, the tension of traffic heavy with impatience, and then suddenly a single impact, one car into another, then another, until multiple vehicles are caught in a chaos. None of them expected that day in that chaos. Isabelle admits she rear-ended the person in front of her, but she denies the idea that her moment of impact directly injured the plaintiff, who is now suing. She argues that while she may have caused the first domino to fall, it is not so clear that the damage and pain suffered by the plaintiff should land squarely on her shoulders. The courtroom becomes the stage where this drama unfolds. And in Utah, the laws themselves seem designed to complicate matters rather than simplify them. Because while it is a no-fault state, there are thresholds that can catapult a case like this from insurance paperwork into a full-scale legal war. What makes this case even more shocking is that the plaintiff has decided not to wait for a slow grind through trial to reach a verdict. Instead, she has made a bold move, offering what is called a proposal of judgment, and the number attached to it makes jaws drop. She is willing to settle this entire dispute for $225,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. $225,000, a figure that carries with it the weight of alleged medical expenses lost, wages, pain, suffering, attorney fees, and every cost tied to the wreckage of that single day. But here is where the suspense deepens. Isabelle and her attorneys received this offer back in August. Yet as of September, there is no sign of agreement. No indication that she is ready to accept the settlement. Instead, the silence stretches longer each day, raising the question, is she preparing to fight this all the way to trial? Is she holding out hope that a jury might side with her and shift the balance of liability? Or is the refusal to accept the settlement a gamble that could end in financial ruin? Because under Utah law, if she rejects this settlement and the plaintiff wins even $1 more than the proposed amount, Isabelle could find herself owing not just the judgment itself, but all the additional costs that pile up from dragging the case through discovery, arbitration, and a jury trial. The gamble is terrifying, yet it seems that is exactly the direction this case is heading, and it leaves us hanging in suspense because every choice from here on will ripple through the future of this young woman who already admitted that she rear-ended another car that day, as if the weight of $225,000 were not enough. The timeline of this case stretches far into the future, with discovery deadlines, expert testimony, and trial readiness scheduled all the way into November of 2026, meaning that for the next year, this cloud will hover over Isabelle. And every motion, every filing will be another reminder of that day on the interstate. And still the plaintiff looms with the settlement offer, a shadow that whispers, accept this now or risk far worse later. The haunting detail is that the plaintiff has not even revealed the exact nature of her injuries. She has not told the world precisely what pain or permanent damage she carries. Yet she insists that the accident altered her life in ways that deserve significant compensation. And in Utah, the threshold to even bring a negligence claim requires at least $3,000 in damages. So when you see a figure like $225,000, it sends a message that whatever happened that day was not minor. It was not a bruise or a scratch, but something larger, something heavy enough to warrant life-altering claims, and in this suspense-filled legal battlefield, Isabelle stands with only her defense, her denials, her hope that somehow the court will see a different picture than the one painted by the plaintiff. But the question that hangs in the air is chilling. What happens if she loses? What happens if a jury looks at the chain reaction? The police reports the ticket she received for following too closely and decides that she was the one who set all of this into motion. The answer could destroy her financial stability and cast a shadow over her name for years to come. And the longer she waits to accept or reject the offer, the tighter the suspense coils around this unfolding story. The deeper we go into this unfolding legal drama, the more unsettling the details become. Because this is not just about one mistake on the highway, it is about the domino effect of responsibility, about how one action can echo through the lives of multiple people, and how the law must determine where the echoes stop. Isabelle Brown has already admitted she rear-ended the car in front of her, and that alone places her in a vulnerable position, because Utah state troopers issued her a citation for following too closely and causing an accident. And while at first glance that ticket might seem like a small matter in the eyes of a civil jury, it becomes a powerful piece of evidence suggesting negligence, suggesting that in that moment, Isabelle was not paying enough attention, not leaving enough space, not prepared for the sudden stop of traffic. And from there, the case spirals into a much darker question of how much damage her action caused and how much of that damage she must pay for. The plaintiff insists that Isabelle set off the chain reaction that left her injured. She insists that while multiple cars were involved, it was Isabelle who became the spark that ignited the chaos. And when you hear that she is demanding $225,000, it becomes clear that her claim is not built on minor injuries, but on something substantial, something that she and her attorneys believe a jury will take seriously. Yet Isabelle pushes back. She says she hit the car, directly in front of her, but denies that her actions directly injured the plaintiff. She suggests that perhaps other drivers bore some share of the blame, that perhaps the collision was more complicated than the plaintiff admits. And here lies the suspense, because the law in Utah operates on a system of comparative negligence, meaning the court must decide not just if Isabelle was at fault, but to what percentage she was at fault. And if her responsibility exceeds 51%, she will be the one who pays the price. And that price could be devastating. What makes this case even more haunting is the silence of the insurance companies. Because in most accidents of this scale, you would see insurance firms step in quickly to defend their clients, to negotiate settlements, to minimize exposure. But so far, there is no sign that an insurer has appeared in this case. No filings, no interventions, nothing. It leaves Isabelle seemingly exposed, carrying the weight of this lawsuit on her own shoulders, and viewers cannot help but wonder, does she have coverage that will eventually step in? Or is she truly standing alone with a possible judgment of hundreds of thousands of dollars looming over her? The plaintiff has already played her card by filing the settlement offer on August 20th, a strategic move designed to pressure Isabelle into either paying now or facing the terrifying uncertainty of trial. The law gives Isabelle 14 days to respond, yet by September 11th, no acceptance had been filed, and that silence feels like a drumbeat counting down to a showdown in court. Imagine being in her shoes, a college student, not a celebrity in her own right, though her family's fame casts a shadow over her life, facing the possibility of a judgment so high that it could crush her financially for years to come. And imagine the plaintiff on the other side, a professional woman, college-educated, respected in her field, who claims that this accident altered her life, who says she now lives with pain that may never fade, and who is determined to hold Isabelle accountable. The suspense here is unbearable because neither side seems willing to bend. Isabelle wants a jury trial. She has made that clear. She believes her best chance is to let 12 strangers decide whether she deserves to bear the blame. Yet that gamble comes with risks that grow heavier with each day, and each motion filed in the court documents already lay out the path ahead. Initial disclosures. Witnesses and evidence must be exchanged. Discovery will stretch into April of 2026. Experts will weigh in by November of that same year. And only after that will the case be ready for trial. It is a marathon, not a sprint. And every step along the way will add new costs, new tension, new headlines that keep this case alive in the public eye. And the deeper we dig, the more chilling it becomes. Because chain reaction crashes in this stretch of Salt Lake are not rare. They are deadly in some cases. Highways shut down for hours. helicopters lifting victims to hospitals, fatalities reported in accidents eerily similar to this one. So when the plaintiff claims she sustained serious injuries, it is not difficult to imagine the truth in her words. And when she says she deserves $225,000, it sends a chill down the spine because it suggests hospitalizations, long recoveries, maybe even permanent damage. Though she has not disclosed the details publicly, the figure alone speaks volumes. Isabelle can argue she was not fully responsible, but the fact remains she was ticketed. She admitted to rear-ending another car, and in a court of law, those admissions could weigh heavily against her. This is why the settlement offer feels like both a lifeline and a trap. If she accepts it, she closes the door on a trial and locks in a painful but certain outcome. If she rejects it, she risks the chaos of trial and the possibility of a verdict far more devastating, the haunting suspense is that we do not know which path she will take. And perhaps she does not know either because each option carries consequences that could alter her life forever. And the longer she hesitates, the louder the whispers become, will she fight? Will she fold? Or will she watch the storm consume her? As the court sets the stage for one of the most dramatic trials Utah may see in years. As we move further into the shadows of this unfolding case, the magnitude of what hangs in the balance begins to sharpen, and the questions only grow darker. Because what does it mean when a young woman already carrying the weight of public scrutiny is left staring down a lawsuit that could strip away not only financial security but also peace of mind? Every headline, every whispered comment online only adds to the sense that the walls are closing in around her. Isabelle Brown is not the kind of name you would expect to be tied to a figure like $225,000 in damages. Yet here she stands caught in a legal snare that will not release her no matter how hard she tries to step away. And it all began in a single instant on a crowded interstate where cars moved too quickly and space between bumpers was too small. That day turned into a nightmare, not just because of the crash, but because of the ripple effect it created. The plaintiff, who now demands justice, says Isabelle's mistake cost her far more than bent metal or broken glass. She says it changed her life, and she wants the court to acknowledge that pain with a judgment strong enough to echo through the years. The suspense is unbearable because this is not simply a legal chess match. It is a test of endurance, a test of who can survive the relentless grind of motions, depositions, deadlines, and the looming possibility of a jury that may or may not believe her story. Isabelle's team insists she is not solely responsible. They argue that chain reaction crashes rarely boil down to one driver, that others on the road may have shared the blame, that perhaps traffic patterns or sudden braking set the stage long before she ever touched her brakes. Yet, the plaintiff cuts through these arguments with the cold precision of her demand. Pay me now, or pay me more later. She has filed her settlement offer with clarity and with confidence, as though she already knows what the jury will decide. And that confidence casts a long shadow over every move Isabelle makes, because the law in Utah leaves little room for error. A ticket in her name, a citation for following too closely already places her on the defensive. And while she denies directly injuring the plaintiff, the fact that she admits to rear-ending another car creates a narrative the opposing side will use like a blade in front of 12 jurors. Chain reaction accidents are messy, but in the courtroom they are often simplified into a story of cause and effect. The first impact. The first mistake becomes the foundation on which liability is built. And in this case, that first mistake belongs to Isabelle. The timeline that stretches before her is daunting: months of discovery, where every medical record, every accident report, every police file will be dissected, months of experts preparing testimony that will paint vivid pictures of pain, suffering, and long-term effects that the plaintiff claims to live with daily. Then, mediation and alternative dispute resolution, followed by readiness for trial in November of 2026, a date that now glows like a warning signal in the distance. Isabelle will live with this weight for more than a year, a countdown she cannot escape. And while some defendants in her position might cling to the hope of insurance stepping in, the silence from insurers so far is deafening. No filings, no motions, no hint of intervention, as though Isabelle stands alone in a courtroom where the stakes are impossibly high. The suspense here is crushing, because what if there is no insurance safety net? What if this young woman must shoulder the cost herself? What if the judgment is entered against her and she must carry it into the future, like a stone around her neck? People close to the case whisper comparisons to similar accidents in Utah. Chain reactions where victims were airlifted from the freeway. Chain reactions where fatalities were reported. Chain reactions where medical costs soared into the hundreds of thousands. The parallels are chilling, and while no details of the plaintiff's injuries have been disclosed, the demand for $225,000 screams of something significant, something beyond ordinary aches and pains. Isabelle may hope the court sees doubt, but doubt does not erase the number, the figure that hovers in the background of every discussion. The haunting question that drives this case is not just whether Isabelle caused the accident, but how much responsibility she must bear, and whether the plaintiff can convince a jury that her life was permanently altered by that one collision for the audience watching from the outside. The suspense builds like a storm cloud because this is more than a civil suit. It is a test of accountability, a test of what happens when youth and inexperience collide with the brutal machinery of the legal system. Every update, every deadline adds another layer of tension, and as the trial date inches closer, the choices before Isabelle narrow into two dangerous paths: accept the settlement and live with the weight of debt, or gamble on a jury and risk a judgment that could be even worse. The silence from her side so far speaks volumes. She has not agreed, she has not yielded, she is preparing to fight. And that decision alone ensures this story will only grow more explosive as it barrels toward the trial that could define her future forever. As the final layers of this story come into focus, the sense of suspense only tightens, because what we are really witnessing is not just a lawsuit about one accident, but the slow unraveling of a life caught in the gears of a legal system that does not bend for youth or inexperience. Isabelle Brown finds herself trapped between the harsh reality of responsibility and the heavy demands of a plaintiff who will not let go. And what makes this final act so gripping is that every choice before her carries danger on one side. The settlement offer of $225,000, a number that even seasoned defendants would struggle to accept, looms like a haunting reminder that sometimes escape comes at a terrible cost. On the other side, the uncertainty of trial. A future where a jury of strangers will weigh her actions, dissect the accident report, study the ticket for following too closely, and decide whether she deserves to pay. Perhaps not just the demanded amount, but something even greater. And here is where the shadows deepen, because if Isabelle rejects the offer and loses, she may be ordered to pay not only the damages, but also the additional costs that build through months of litigation, expert testimony, and endless filings costs that will not vanish but multiply. And the longer she waits, the more that figure threatens to swell into something she may never escape. This is the kind of suspense that grips viewers because it feels like watching a slow-moving train headed toward a cliff. The plaintiff remains confident, filing her offer with the certainty of someone who believes her injuries and her suffering are undeniable. She presents herself as educated, professional, credible, and not driven by greed, but by the pursuit of justice. And that image makes her case even more dangerous for Isabelle, because juries often side with plaintiffs who appear grounded and trustworthy. And when the figure of $225,000 is placed in front of them, it may not seem unreasonable compared to the devastating costs of medical care, rehabilitation, lost wages, and the pain of an altered life. Isabelle, meanwhile, continues to insist that she was not solely responsible, that the chain reaction cannot be pinned entirely on her, that others share the blame, that her moment of error was not the single cause of everything that followed. But the reality of the courtroom is far colder. Admissions matter, tickets matter, the first impact matters. And in this case, all of those threads point directly back to her. The timeline stretching toward November of 2026 creates its own kind of suspense, because it means this story will not fade quickly. It will not disappear. It will linger with her for more than a year, a constant reminder of what hangs above her head, and each step in the process will reopen the wound depositions that force her to relive the moment accident, reconstructions that strip away every detail of that day, expert witnesses painting vivid images of injuries that may haunt the plaintiff forever, all of it building toward a trial that will decide her fate. And still, the silence from insurers is the most chilling detail of all. No filings, no attempts to intervene, leaving viewers to wonder, is she truly standing alone? If she is, the weight becomes unbearable, because without insurance, she would face a judgment that could break her financially before her adult life has even truly begun. And what makes the suspense unbearable is the uncertainty. We cannot know if she will accept the settlement, if she will gamble on a jury, if she will find herself crushed under the burden of a verdict, or if some last-minute negotiation will save her from disaster. All we know is that this story is not over, it is still unfolding, and as the deadlines approach, the storm grows closer and closer until it becomes impossible to look away. Because this is not just about cars colliding on a highway, this is about the collision of truth, responsibility, and consequence in a courtroom that will not show mercy. Isabelle Brown stands at the center of it all. Her choices narrowing her options, shrinking, and her future hanging in the balance like a fragile thread that could snap. At any moment, leaving only the echo of that day on the interstate and the haunting question of whether one mistake will define her forever in the end. What we are left with is not a simple traffic accident, but a haunting reminder that life can change in the span of a single moment, 1 second behind the wheel, one miscalculation, one impact, and the ripple effects can echo for years. Isabelle Brown finds herself at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the cost of a mistake that she cannot undo. The plaintiff stands firm, demanding $225,000, and the legal system has made clear that the clock is ticking. If Isabelle pays, she carries the burden of financial ruin. If she refuses, she carries the risk of a jury verdict that could destroy everything she has tried to hold on to the silence of insurance. The looming trial, the pressure of lawyers' depositions and expert witnesses, all of it presses down on her like a weight that will not lift. The story has become larger than two cars on a highway. It is about accountability. It is about the fragile line between youth and responsibility. And it is about the way the world does not stop to forgive, even when the mistake was not born of malice, but of inexperience. As the months move forward, the suspense will only sharpen until November of 2026, when the courtroom doors finally open and a jury must decide her fate. And as we wait, all we can do is wonder, will Isabelle find a way to settle? Will she fight to the end? Will she stand alone? Or will someone finally step forward to shield her from the storm that is closing in? The answers are not here yet, but the questions will linger like a shadow, a reminder that one decision, one crash, one instant can alter everything forever.